Think of it just like a beef chuck roast. It's gonna come out great. Hey guys, Clint here with Butcher Boy out in Reno. Today we're gonna break down a whole lamb. We bring in whole lambs on a regular basis. It's a great way for us to get all the different cuts, have a good display in the case, and you know, keeps our chops up. Because basically every four-legged animal is kind of built the same. We've talked about beef, we've gone over some other animals, and a lamb is just the right size to kind of put it all into perspective. So basically three different sections, if you will, on a lamb. We're gonna have that front portion, which is gonna be the chuck, those front shoulders. We're gonna have the middle section, which is gonna be the rib and the loin, and then the hind, which is the round, the lamb legs. If we're comparing that to beef, that front section is gonna be the chuck, the cross rib, brisket, etc., all in there. That middle section, that rib is gonna be prime ribs, rib steaks, those guys. Loin's gonna be New York's, tenderloins, T-bones, as we've gone through. And then out of the hind, you're gonna get the rounds, top round, bottom round, etc. So let's start breaking this guy down. First thing we're gonna do is, on the front end here, we're gonna separate that front shoulder at the 5th rib. So if we poke inside here, we can count the number of ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I always give myself just a little mark here so I know where I'm cutting. Just poke the knife through. And that's gonna give us an idea of where we're splitting this guy here. Okay, so that is gonna put us right where we wanna be. So from there, I'll just give us a nice line to follow. And then we grab our saw, cut through that backbone. And what you're gonna see here is we pull this out. Whoop, didn't get quite through that brisket portion. So that 5th rib is gonna split that chuck portion from the rib portion right at the end of the shoulder blade there. Again, every four-legged animal is basically the same. That's gonna kind of determine that 5th rib, where the rib separates from the front shoulders. For now, we're gonna set this guy aside and continue breaking this guy down. So then the hind portion, we wanna pull off of that middle, basically right at the top of the hip joint. So you can feel it in there. There's a little dimple in there that we're gonna follow. And again, we're just gonna take our knife. We're gonna mark right at the end of that. We're gonna take our saw and go through. And then it starts looking more and more like cuts you're gonna see in the case. So you can see where that loin section, little tenderloin right there, kind of looks like a porterhouse steak would be on a beef, right? And the sirloin, etc. So from there, we're just gonna kind of clean this up a little bit. Then we're gonna go to the bandsaw to start breaking it down further. So now that we're over at the bandsaw, we got that front section, those front shoulders. Basically gonna take that neck off, that goes into bone-in stew meat. You can also take the bones out, do boneless stew meat, or it works good for trim to make grind. And then we'll pull the shanks and that brisket, that portion of the breast off, and that'll leave us with some nice shoulders for shoulder chops and shoulder roasts. So now you can see we've got those bone-in whole shoulders where we can cut the chops or the roast out of. We've got the foreshanks, and we got that neck for stew, trim, etc. On this guy, we're gonna cut those shoulder chops we've got that always go into the case. You're gonna get 2 of them. On a beef, this would be called a cross rib, and then a chuck. You can get 2 different ones. On the lamb, we get about 3 of these round bone shoulder chops, and then we'll get about 4 of those 7 bone or blade chops out of there. And as we do with all of our bone-in cuts, we're gonna take this little bone scraper, remove some of that bone dust, just because it's not great texture. Just the bone and the fat that comes off of the saw blade as it's going through. Like so. And then with a bit of trimming, we end up with some nice lamb shoulder chops. Like that. Always available in the case. Good for grilling, good for stewing or braising. Think of it just like a beef chuck roast. It's gonna come out great. All right, let's move on to the legs. On the legs right here, pretty simple. All we're doing on the saw is you're gonna split these guys in half, cut that shank down, and then we're gonna go ahead and pull the bones out, show you how we prepare bone-in lamb leg roast for the case. So the middle section here, again, that's our rib or our racks, rib chops, and our loin, which is gonna give us either boneless loin roast or loin chops. We're just gonna slit this guy right down the backbone, and then we're gonna cut what we call the breast off, which is gonna be like the belly portion of the lamb that we get riblets out of.